Well, look at all this great stuff. Well, we're really excited to be back in Polk County. I want to thank Sheriff Grady Judd for being with us, as always. Great to have him. We're also joined by our First Lady, my wife Casey, Lieutenant Governor Collins, and Surgeon General Joe Ladapo, who's doing a great job. Now, they're going to talk a little bit more about the announcement today with respect to, we've really tried to embrace this kind of healthy Florida. There's a lot of the stuff they're doing at the federal. They just changed the food pyramid, which, they say focus on like protein, fruits, and vegetables, right? And like they used to say, oh, don't do anything with fat in it. Well, the problem with that is then a lot of people gravitated to low fat that had other things, and so I think that they've done something that's evidence-based there. So there's a whole bunch of good stuff going on with that, and I'll let them talk a little bit more in depth about that. I do want to just say this is America 250 in 2026, and so we've been doing a lot in Florida, even though we weren't part of the original 13 colonies. We were a Spanish colony at the time, but eventually got on the team. And so we've done a lot of different things. So last year I got a statue of George Washington, and we put in I got it from Mount Vernon, and we put it in the Florida Capitol. Really amazing statue. We put a Franklin statue in Franklin County right there at their courthouse, I think, or one of their buildings. We did Thomas Jefferson statue in Jefferson County, and you have this nice statue of him just sitting there, really good. I've got James Madison on the way for Madison County. The thing is, these liberal states take down the founding fathers, so I get these things at a discount around the country. It's a buyer's market, so I'm doing it. So you have that. We're going to do Hamilton at Hamilton County. I'm going to do another Washington for Washington County. Monroe is down in the Florida Keys, and so we may airdrop Jimmy Monroe in Key West and see what happens there. It should be fun. But so we're doing a lot of that for like the founding generation, but we're also saying, well, people that have exemplified these ideals over the years, we can also do stuff from there. So I got on the way a statue of one of our presidents from the 1920s, Calvin Coolidge. And first of all, he was really good, very underrated, very successful. But we're actually going to bring that to Polk County. We're going to bring it to Lake Wales at Bok Tower. Why? His last public address as president was the dedication of Bok Tower Gardens in 1929. And they actually have video of it and all this other stuff. It's interesting, like, video killed the radio star. Like, the way these guys talked then was different. They would definitely not want you to be on stage if you did. So it was a little bit different, but, he's up there dedicating, this great, and it's a very great, cool part of Florida, too. So we're working on getting that down and bringing that there, and I think that's a great connection. The fact, I think he had gone to Mount Dora in Lake County and then went down to Lake Wales after that. So really, really neat. So we're going to be doing all that other stuff over the course of these next 7 months, not even 7 months, all the way into July 4th of 2026. And we've done a lot of civics and all this stuff with our schools and everything, and it's really important. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to bring Silent Cow down here to Polk County, and I think people will really, really like it. So today, and I'll let the First Lady and Surgeon General talk a little bit more about it, but we've really leaned in hard on medical freedom and informed consent during my tenure as governor. Now, the reality is, when I was running in 18, if you had asked me about this, I didn't really know. No one was talking about pandemic. Most of the people, like if CDC had said something, I just assumed that was right. Doctor, all this stuff. And what happened with COVID is it really exposed the soft underbelly of a lot of intellectual corruption into some of these entrenched institutions. And so you had things like the American Society of Pediatrics, saying, well, no, kids should be in school, that they shouldn't. And then, like, the Biden administration put pressure, then they flipped and they said, oh no, you shouldn't. And then it was like, well, there's no evidence that putting this mask on helps, and then they flipped. and said, oh no, the 4-year-olds need to have this on 8 hours a day. It was ridiculous. And so we really led the way in Florida to say, actually people are going to be able to make these decisions for themselves. So we were the first state to require all schools to be open way back in the summer of 2020. We fought the mandates. We did all this other stuff. And the state benefited clearly from that. And that was really some of the thing that launched us to be the free state of Florida. But it bothered me because, it's one thing if there's some uncertainty and you got to kind of make a judgment, but what they were doing, and these were people that were supposedly reputable, they had the credentials, they were part of the right societies, but they were doing and not only just doing things and advocating, but wanting to coerce things that were just simply not true based on the data. And so I'm looking at the data and it's not correct what they're saying. And so that really, I think, caused me to be like, well, wait a minute, what is going on here? So there was an agenda and a narrative that was really at play in a lot of this stuff. And I also think back about how they wanted to coerce mRNA vaccine shots. Now, we stopped that in Florida. They wanted to fire firefighters. They wanted to fire people from businesses, and we gave protection against that because, honestly, you had some people that had already recovered from COVID with natural immunity, and then they're saying you got to do something that you didn't want to do. So it didn't make any sense. It was more about pushing an agenda. And then come to find out, the effectiveness of this stuff, you have people that are getting like all these boosters and they get COVID still. In some respects, I think Joe would say you may be more likely depending on your situation. So, and the thing is like this should have never, ever had any coercion involved. It should have been something that people can make judgments based on informed consent. They're doing on this childhood vaccine schedule, and Joe may want to talk about it, but I just think it's interesting. When I was a kid, we took some. There were a limited number. Then that's just grown dramatically to like all these jabs, right? And it's like they want you to take the COVID jab as an infant. Do you really need to do hepatitis, sexually transmitted disease? They want to do infant. And so HHS CDC have kind of reevaluated that and gotten those recommendations that I think are a little bit more manageable. But you got to ask yourself, when somebody is recommending or whether they're coercing, what is on the back end of that? What's the relationship between somebody in medical and like big drug companies, for example? What's the financial arrangements? And I'm telling you, there's a seedy underbelly to all of this stuff. So our view on all of it is informed consent. Coercion does not work in the medical context, and so you should have the ability to make these judgments, but you should never be put in a position where if you choose to make a judgment contrary to whatever the narrative is, that somehow your rights are going to be circumscribed, your opportunities in life are going to be circumscribed in some of these things. That is not the way that you do. So one of the things that we want to do with the legislature is, there'll be places, I think it was like in Indiana, like a year ago or something, you had this girl, I think she was like a teenager, and she needed a surgery, and she got rejected because she hadn't taken the flu and COVID shots. And I'm just thinking to myself, how could you do the discrimination like that? There's some physicians that won't see patients if they don't do some of these things. So the thing is that's not informed consent, because like you either do it or you suffer consequences. And I think Joe's been very good at saying that that's just not the way that we want to go about it. So those are going to be things that we're going to be doing on. But one of the other things that we wanted to do, and Joe has been very upfront on this, is some of the stuff that's out there in this ecosystem, particularly for babies, what is in some of this stuff? And I think their view is, we want it to be transparent and everything. I just think you grow normal food and eat it. That's what God intended, right? Well, now so much stuff is processed, and they throw this in and they throw that in and all this stuff. And for me, that's not anything I've ever, I see it on the shelf, it looks just down the hatch, right? But that's probably not the best way to go about doing this. And so, the First Lady, gets to a point where, she's trying to tell me, what's in that, all this stuff, and I'm just like, don't tell me. I mean, but I think just having the information, I'm not going to tell you you got to use this or that or anything like that, but having this information out so that people are able to do it. So Joe and the First Lady, they have done, and the Lieutenant Governor, have the commission, and some of the things that they're doing is testing some of these staples, like the infant formula, and that's what they're going to talk about today. So I'm supportive of the effort. I think we understand there's a lot of financial interests that are at stake in a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of things that influence, and what we just want is basically transparency and the truth, and we want people to be able to make the best decision for them, not necessarily what would be in the best decision of some manufacturer or something like that. And we've got so much processed throughout the economy and throughout our food supply that I think people appreciate having some more information. So I'm going to let the First Lady and Joe take it away. So come on up.
As it pertains to his health, I'm really empowering him with the facts so he can make informed decisions. So that's what I do. That's why I show you the ingredients.
Really good.
Listen, when you were speaking, I was looking at some of the products. We might be walking away with a few things, but no, good to be here. I really do appreciate, Ron giving me the opportunity to be able to come and lead this up with the Lieutenant Governor and our great Surgeon General to be able to help bring some transparency to all of this, and that is really one of the things that we're spearheading as it pertains to this commission, because as many of you know, this is very, very deeply personal to me, because I am the mother of 3 very rambunctious small children. Many of you know I'm a cancer survivor. The health and well-being of Floridians, my family, myself is of top priority, and I've said this and I'll say it a million times. I don't want anybody to have to go through what I went through. It was not fun. Going through all of those procedures and surgeries and treatments and takes a toll, and trying to do that with a family. And so if there is something that we can do to help make your lives better and healthier, we have an obligation to stand up and fight on your behalf, and that is exactly what we are doing. So when I start thinking about health and I start thinking about what we consume, and I was like Ron for a while, like, you put it on a shelf and I eat it. I didn't really think too much about the ingredients. I have since changed my philosophy, and I think more about what I'm consuming and what we consume as Americans. And for me, it's no longer about the calories. It's not really about how you look in the bathing suit, right? You look at something and you think, well, if I eat this, I'm just going to gain more weight. There's a lot to it about what you're putting in your body, how it affects your cells and your systems and your overall long-term health. Small, repeated exposures to hidden toxins can really add up in ways we don't always see until a problem occurs. And that is especially true when it comes to babies who are consuming products unknowingly, while parents are doing everything that they can to try to make the best decisions that they can for their children. Parents should be able to trust that the products that they bring home are safe. They should not have to wonder whether the food that they are consuming or they're giving to their children could be quietly impacting their health over time. So today, as part of our Healthy Florida First initiative, we are launching what will be a series of, I believe, major announcements focused on safety and integrity of our food supply. We are beginning with baby formula because it affects the most vulnerable among us, and we have an obligation that we absolutely must get this right. Over the past few months, very proud to announce that through independent testing, we've really taken this head on. And we have done this testing through certified laboratories. The Florida Department of Health has collected 24 infant formulas from 7 different brands purchased for multiple locations, both online and in stores. Those samples were tested for arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury. And what we found in those 24 samples was troubling. Of the 24 infant formulas tested, 16 of those formulas contained at least 1, if not more, heavy metals that exceeded federal standards. Mercury was the most common, detected above federal benchmarks in 16 formulas. Arsenic exceeded benchmarks in 5 formulas, cadmium 3, and lead 2. Importantly, 6 of the formulas showed elevated metal levels in every sample purchased from different locations. And that tells us it's not a one-off shipment or a single store issue. It points to systemic problems in sourcing or in manufacturing. But there is a silver lining, however, that is really important to mention. Some of the formulas did not show elevated levels. That tells us that contamination is not inevitable. There are better choices for parents, but we have to stay on top of this, and we have to drive accountability. You may remember it was about a year ago that Consumer Reports, they did an investigation that raised serious concerns about toxic metals in baby formula. In response, the federal government, Secretary Kennedy, and President Trump rightly launched Operation Stork Speed, calling for increased testing, an important step that really acknowledged the seriousness of this concern and the need for better data to protect infants. So Florida now, as the first state in the nation, is stepping into the fold as a major force multiplier to test, to keep testing, to ensure that these chemicals do not exceed federal standards, and honestly, to work to ensure that there are no chemicals or hazardous metals in baby formula. And we are asking at this point that other states step up and help to utilize their assets to join us in testing these products. When states work together, accountability increases, transparency improves, and manufacturers start paying attention. And that really brings us to a question that really deserves, I believe, to be asked. If formula manufacturers are required by federal law to test every batch of baby formula for microbes and bacteria like salmonella before it ever leaves the plant, then why would we not expect them to test for harmful chemicals before that product ever reaches a child? If we agree that babies deserve protection from immediate threats, shouldn't we also be doing everything possible to protect them from potential long-term harm? Parents are trying to do everything right. We're reading the labels, we're trusting brands, we're following guidance. They should never be put in a position where that trust is misplaced. And that is why getting this right matters, and that is why government does have a role to play. While infant formula is regulated under federal law with statutory authority residing within the U.S. Congress, Florida can help in a meaningful way through independent, ongoing testing to continue to drive accountability. Parents should not be expected to verify the integrity of products on their own. And this is where government has the responsibility to indeed act on their behalf. Additionally, in light of these testing results, we have reached out to our federal partners to provide more options for Florida families who are currently being supported by WIC, the Women, Infants, and Child Program. And thanks to Secretary Kennedy and his team, Florida families will now have more formula options that will be covered by financial assistance if they choose to change their formula in light of these recent results. All of this information, including the results, can be found on the website exposingfoodtoxins.com. So Florida will continue to lead. Florida will continue to fight on behalf of families all across this great state and do what is within its authority to test, verify, retest, hold people accountable, and bring transparency where families deserve answers. We will use the strength and scale of the state to support parents, protect children, and drive accountability where it matters most. And let me just say this, we are not going to stop at baby formula. We have a lot more announcements. We, over the past few months, have been doing a lot of testing. We have been looking into a lot of products, and we're going to be talking about this quite a bit over the next few days and, honestly, weeks. And I can tell you Florida is committed to leading the way, to working with our federal and our state partners to push for higher standards so that families can have the confidence in what they consume. And if we do this, this is how we build a healthier Florida. And ultimately, that leads to a healthier America. And I'm honored to be a part of it.
Wonderful comments there. Thank you, First Lady. Thank you, Governor. As always, I wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for the Governor. Just to share a little bit about myself briefly before we we won't dive deeply into any science, but we'll talk a little bit about some science. So I'm a physician. I went to medical school at the same university that this gentleman went to law school. We were actually, believe it or not, we were in Boston, blocks from each other, because I lived close to Harvard Law School when he was up there too, while I was in medical school, and I took care of patients and did clinical research before fortunately being appointed Surgeon General by the governor. So, I was really enthused to start this position 4 years ago. I can't believe I've been doing this for 4 years, in the heat of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know many of us have tried to forget, but we all at some level remember how much madness and craziness and how high the temperature was at that time. And I was just incredibly enthusiastic to be so fortunate to be appointed to a position where I was able to, work with Governor DeSantis and others in Florida government to really help change the tide, turn the tide away from just a terribly destructive direction that things were headed toward in a very strong manner. And, and I loved it because I love empowering people. I love empowering people. I love helping people achieve whatever it is that they're trying to achieve, especially when it comes to good health. I love that. Obviously, I am an addict to exercise. So every single day, I can't remember the last day I missed a day of exercise. And, I can't drag, folks with me who don't want to exercise, but I get energized by providing people with information that allows them to make better decisions, so whether that is more physical activity or changing their health choices or changing, say, some of the supplements they take in or some of the practices that they engage in. So I love that. It gives me massive amounts of energy, really love it. And when the First Lady just started this conversation with us about what we can do at the government level to make a very powerful difference for the people of Florida, I probably levitated from my seat, sitting there in the meeting by a few millimeters there. So this is, it's hard for me to convey how enthusiastic I am about this work, and let everyone know who manufactures that you're not off the hook. We really do have many more tests that we're going to be talking about, important tests, because they relate to things that we consume or our kids consume. So very important stuff. In this particular area, testing baby formula obviously is very important. Many babies consume baby formula. Not every baby, not every family is able to breastfeed solely, and a lot of families supplement. A lot of families may only use baby formula. And I've got 3 boys, so dial back time, I had the experience of when we were looking to supplement, to figure out, okay, what are we going to put in our kids, and unfortunately, mostly by chance, frankly, we made some good choices because I happened to have a friend at the time who was actually using a brand from Europe called Holly, and it turns out it was one of the ones we tested, and it ended up testing really well. But unfortunately, a lot of the brands didn't test so well. So as the First Lady mentioned, we tested for pesticides, and we also tested for heavy metals, and particularly arsenic, mercury, lead, and cadmium. And these are all heavy metals that are problematic. Mercury is probably one of the most toxic things that you can put into a person's body, maybe followed right at the same level or just second by lead. So really terrible stuff. So we're talking about neurodevelopmental injury. We're talking about injury to your kidneys, to your lungs, to your livers, to pretty much every organ in your body. And we're also talking about dysfunction in your immune system in terms of your risk of developing cancer. So very important chemicals that we want to limit our exposure to. And the government has recognized this. The U.S. EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, has recognized this. So they've developed these limits, these daily limits for how much people consume in their water, because it's hard to get to zero, but the closer you are to zero, the better. And so we use that same standard for baby formula because, of course, babies drink it. And the thing to keep in mind is that the chances are that these are actually, what we've found is actually an understatement of the risk, because as pretty much everyone who's had a baby knows, babies are actually way more sensitive. So something that you or I could sort of be exposed to and process, their weight, the ratio of their weight to how much they consume is very different from an adult. So they're actually much more sensitive. So these findings are actually really understatements of the risk they face. And many of these formulas, most of them, in the samples that we collected, and we did that around the state to make sure that we were getting different lot numbers, samples from different areas, had levels of these heavy metals that were beyond the EPA's safe water drinking standards. And we're giving this to babies. I wish I could say this was an isolated finding, but this pattern of food that we consume, that our kids consume, that our babies consume, that is not in alignment with our best health, with the ability of each of us to attain our best health, is actually very common. And again, we're going to be sharing more findings. And how did we get to this point? Well, we got to this point because of, as the governor was saying, I mean, it's a seedy underbelly, right? There are rooms where decisions are made, and historically, and those decisions were not to the benefit of you or I. They were to the benefit of manufacturers. They were for the benefit of maximizing profits of a private few. And while I absolutely support people seeking entrepreneurship and the commerce and the economic gains and the prosperity that brings, that's not the same thing as backroom deals that again are for the benefit of a few individuals and not for the benefit of the consumers. And so shedding light on these findings is something that every state is capable of doing. Fortunately, we now have federal leadership that is interested in that, with Secretary Kennedy, our Dr. Makari at the FDA, and others who are at Health and Human Services, HHS. But it's also an odd thing that here we are in Florida. Every state is capable of doing this, and right now we're the only people doing this. So we need more people, more states doing this, because the citizens depend on government for certain specific things that individuals can't easily supply, and this is one of those things. So again, we're going to have more information. We have a website, I think, we're going to be announcing, that will provide a summary of the different baby formulas that were tested, so that families and moms can review this stuff, and dads can review this stuff and make decisions, and maybe make some better decisions with this new information. And again, I want to thank our federal partners who are working with us and are going to provide us with some more flexibility, so that Florida families that depend on the WIC program, the Women, Infants, and Children program, for obtaining formula will be able to shift and make different decisions based on the balance of their interests and the information that we're providing. All right, so more to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ladapo. I want to take a step back, and I want to talk about the impact of leadership on the state. I'm often asked, where would Florida be during COVID if it wasn't for Governor Ron DeSantis? How different would our state be? I'd actually ask you, how would our nation be? When other states and other countries were attacking him, he stood. He stood between the people and those who wanted to do harm. It took one man, one family, acting with courage and conviction to protect and preserve our state and our way. What you see here is a direct connection and an escalation and continuation of that exact thing. Standing with courage to protect and preserve what we have and what we care about the very most. Now, if you've heard me speak, you know that I'm honored to be the 21st Lieutenant Governor. It's a privilege that people like me rarely get, growing up in a broken home and a failed farm. I served as a Green Beret for 23 years. My wife's a 20-year veteran as well. But I am a husband and I am a dad first and foremost. And what we're talking about here is critical. My job in all of those things was to preserve and protect, to stand between my loved ones and those things that would harm them. And I am so excited and so grateful for the courage of people like Joe Latipo, Casey DeSantis, Governor Ron DeSantis, people who want to step in and do the hard right. But let's ask ourselves, why aren't other states stepping in and stepping up to join us in what we do? You know, life often is put out on the airwaves now. It's on Twitter, it's on the news, it's on Instagram, Facebook, you name it, right? But when it comes down to it, as much as we're connected, we're so disconnected sometimes from the things that matter most. Look around this room. How many of you are parents, grandparents, have loved ones that this could impact? I reflect on my time with my children. We had a very medically complex child who had multiple issues. We tried breastfeeding and it just wasn't going to work. So we used formula. And unfortunately, some of the formulas we used are some of the ones that we know have bad numbers. And it's concerning to me as a dad to know that that was happening. And was it happening when my son was going through this? Because he was dependent on those to live. We were at that point. So I want to bring this full circle, and I want to talk about conviction, courage, and leadership. And I'm so grateful, Governor, for your courage and conviction and your leadership on these issues. Casey, you know, we've talked about this many times. I am so inspired by how you come across and how you fight for our families. Your passion and dedication is amazing. I'm looking forward to being a part of this as we continue forward. And I want you to know that when Florida leads, America wins. And I also challenge every other state to step in and step up like you see the great free state of Florida doing. Thank you, and God bless each of you.
Jay's been kind of an expeditionary lieutenant governor for us, given his background. I just want to let everybody, there's no truth to the rumor that he was participated in the Maduro raid. So just don't even go there. Those are rumors. I thank the Surgeon General. You know, he mentioned, you know, being at Harvard Medical School, and I was at the law school. I can tell you this. We are not two of Harvard's favorite graduates, given our. I mean, let's just be clear on that. And so, you know, it is what it is. So I want to thank Golden Ridge Grove. Now, what's the address if people want to come? They can come and shop, right? No. I want people. Yeah. What is it? 2129 Alturas Road, Golden Ridge Grove. So they've got juices. They've got fresh produce. I was housing some grapefruit before we came in here. It was really juicy. I had to wash my hands because the juice was amazing. So it's really, really good. And, you know, I'm looking at that Vidalia onion thing. Take that to Tom's Chicken Shack and dunk those tenders in there. So it's really good. So, yeah, so please, if you have an opportunity, they're going to put the website out on this so that parents have the ability to look and to make these decisions. And I know Joe's going to be looking at other things to kind of ferret out some of the issues that may be there. Like I said, I was always a guy that's on the shelf, just down the hatch. I would never look. But, you know, it's probably the right thing, what they're doing, First Lady and Joe, to get this in a more transparent posture. So I commend them for doing it, and we'll have more in the days and weeks to come. Okay, we got any questions? Yeah, no, so the ramifications, so do you want to address the ramifications of lead and some of the other things?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so, you know, it's one of these things where science and judgment kind of have to meet and find some balance. So scientifically, right, there's always uncertainty about, we can know that something increases risk, but the quantifying that risk, you know, and quantifying the time interval, there's always uncertainty in that. So there are models in the field of toxicology that do that type of quantification, and we actually have done that internally, and we have that. I think, though, what's most useful for Floridians is, you know, understanding that, at least at a threshold, all of these substances are, if we were going to say, is it not bad, completely inert, a little bad, very bad, they're all in the very bad column. So whether, there's a difference of 10%, 20%, 30% in whatever the attributable risk is, that's not, in my opinion, as important for consumers. So we're really trying to provide enough information so that people can make better consumption decisions, but not so that people are comparing what the attributable risk is of one versus the other, because again, I don't think that's as useful for consumers. Right. So currently the website, and I wish I had a copy of it to show you, but it really is more designed for like consumers that don't have. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. So here's a pictographic. So as you can see, there are different pictures of formula, kind of different colors, and the red circles indicate when a formula had a level of an exposure that exceeded the EPA's daily limit, and this is what the website currently looks like.
Are these state-funded tests, and under whose direction are these tests done in, and how does the testing itself work?
Yeah, this is state funded. I didn't pay for the test myself, so yeah, this is state funded. So, I have a medical degree, but we have a lot of lawyers in the Department of Health, and it is, totally and very obviously within our purview as a public health agency to do this type of work.
How long did the test last for?
Pardon, sir?
How long did the test last for? In other words, how long was it take for?
I'm so sorry. I'm not following your question.
Test take.
Oh, I think testing like this, probably usually takes days to a few weeks, for example.
All right. And I know being in Central Florida, we're probably more Gator country, but I did want to congratulate the Miami Hurricanes on making it to the college football playoff final. The state of Florida, I mean, how many of us who grew up here, we were spoiled because every year we had 2 or 3 teams that were in the top 5, 6, 7 teams in the country. Florida State, Florida, Miami. We had a great run, and yet since the playoffs been in, until this year, no team from the state of Florida had ever won even a single playoff game. And this has been, so you basically had a run of, kind of futility. And I fought very hard publicly that Miami should be in the playoff. Because remember, they were one of the bubble teams. You had Alabama, Notre Dame, Miami. Now, I was for Miami, but also Notre Dame, and I don't think Alabama ended up playing well, but it's fine. Miami should have been in, right? And so Miami now has an opportunity to actually play for the national championship in your home stadium in Hard Rock. And I remember, and many of you remember, we were able to have the Bucks play a home Super Bowl. Remember 2021, Tom Brady? And they were able to win at home, and I do think that's going to be an added advantage for them, as that happens. I've said this publicly a lot. We're in Tallahassee, since I got in office, and my kids have kind of grown up going to the Seminole stuff, and so they are like really big time Seminole, which is fine. Like that's not me guiding them, but like my son, who's in 2nd grade. Like, it ain't just he likes the Seminoles. Like, he hates the Gators and he hates Miami. So I said, Mason, if Miami is playing Oregon in the championship, are you going to root for Miami? Nope. Are you going to root for, if Indiana plays them, are you going to root for Miami? No, Indiana. I mean, so like, I'm like, man, like, I'm the governor. You can't be hating on Florida teams. Like, come on, let's get this going. So, and anyways, I think it's going to be a lot of fun for there. And then we also have, I'm very open. I'm a Bucks fan, but I was glad to see the Jaguars make the playoffs. If we were here, 2.5 months ago, I would have thought that the Bucks were on the way, good. They look so good. So it was a really bad end of the season, and they didn't make it. And honestly, I mean, I don't know that they would have been able to do very well under current trajectory. But the Jaguars have a great trajectory. they're going to play this weekend. So we got a lot of interesting stuff going on, throughout the free state of Florida, and hopefully the healthiest infant formula that you could have. So thanks, everybody. God bless.